Welcome back! Today we're looking at the Iliad, and we're starting with Book 13. As we last left off, those Trojans had finally broken through the fortifications of the Greeks, and things looked pretty grim for the Achaeans. And I think it's time for some thick and fast fighting. But before we get into the action of this book, let's go ahead and look at who the characters are. So with each book, I've been giving a list of the key characters for that book. However, in this one, the action happens so quick and so fast, and there are so many characters involved, it's a little difficult to narrow down the list. And even as a narrowed down list, it's going to run a little long. However, these are the characters that I think deserve the most attention in this book. The first is the god Poseidon. Now, Poseidon has not been getting involved up to this point. He complained a little bit about the fortifications. Hera tried to goad him into action, but he has been wise enough not to go head-to-head with Zeus. But he definitely does take a role in this particular book. Poseidon is brother to Zeus, and so he's pretty powerful as well. Not quite on par with Zeus, but when he takes to the action, you know it's going to be good. He's also the god of the ocean, and there's all kinds of fun ocean imagery whenever he's around. A lot of our favorite heroes are still on the field, the Ajaxes and Teucer for instance, but it's time in this book to give a few of the other heroes a chance to shine. We see that especially with Idomeneus, who's an older warrior. He's depicted as having gray hair, but being very experienced and still very strong. He's been around the block, and he knows how to fight well, and that comes out in this book. There's also his close friend and attendant, Meriones, who's going to fight side by side with him. And both of them are depicted as experienced but enthusiastic fighters. We also get some more action from Menelaus, Agamemnon's brother. And not only is he going to participate well in the fighting right now, but he's also going to have a great little speech about war in the middle of this book. He's not known for being quite as tough as Agamemnon, but he gets some good action here. On the Trojan side, we have a whole lot of heroes. We get some more action from Hector and Paris, although Hector isn't the focal point of this book. Paris gets to actually have some good action. And for once, he's not shirking. As usual, Hector and Paris are going to clash a little bit, but it's going to be interesting to see the outcome in this book. Another one of their brothers, Deiphobus, is also in this fight, and he's going to trade a lot of insults back and forth with Idomeneus. We're also going to get a little help from Aeneas, who's going to step in to the fight as well. Like I said though, the action happens so fast in this book that it's difficult to really highlight all of the characters. Let's see how much of the action I can actually sum up for you. So the book begins right after that moment where Hector has broken through the gates, and Sarpedon up at the top of the wall has also broken through. The fighting is intense, and Zeus looks around and he goes, "Alright, I got him past the fortifications. Cool, cool. Let's see what else is going on in the world. Let's flip to another channel." And so his gaze moves away from the battle. He gets bored, I guess. Got other things to do. Poseidon has been waiting for just this moment, and as soon as he sees Zeus's attention drift away from the battle, he steps in. Now he knows better than to challenge Zeus head-on, and Zeus thinks that none of the gods will dare defy him and step into the battle. And in fact, he's right about all the ones sitting up in Mount Olympus. But Poseidon is waiting in the ocean right there. And he sees this as an opportunity to nudge things in a different direction. And so Poseidon rides up in his chariot and jumps out there and starts imitating all of these different characters, human characters, and tapping different heroes on the shoulder, trying to inspire them. Very quickly, he gives some god power to Ajax and Ajax. And at first we're like, oh cool, now we get another big fight scene with the Ajaxes. But we actually shift away from them very, very quickly. And Poseidon continues to walk up and down the line, tapping individual heroes, nudging them toward the battle, filling them with inspiration and courage. And so the Greeks finally are able to do a pushback. We see some skirmishing back and forth in the middle of the line between Hector and the Ajaxes, but then our attention really shifts over to Idomeneus. And Idomeneus had just been carrying one of his buddies off the field who had been injured. And so Poseidon gives him a little boost, encourages him to get back into the fighting. And then Idomeneus runs into Meriones, his assistant, who's always named with him. The two of them are close buds. And Meriones has just come from the battle. He was just in a fight with Deiphobus. And he hurled his spear, went into Deiphobus' shield, and just shattered. And so now Meriones is without a spear, and so he's dashed off the battlefield looking for another spear. Unfortunately, his particular camp is far away from where he wants to be fighting. And so he's got a long way to haul down there and get a new spear. Idomeneus sees him, and the two of them encourage each other for a moment, and Idomeneus offers Meriones one of his spears in his tent. And the two of them do this sort of like pat each other on the back, semi-brag conversation for about 2 pages, until finally they're like, oh, we should get back to battle. But basically they both are like, yeah, I've had tons of experience. We both beat up lots and lots of Trojans. We got loads of Trojan armor and spears and stuff in our tents. So Idomeneus is like, quick, grab one of my spears, one I've taken in battle, and get back out there. We got some work to do. And so as Meriones comes back out with his big spear, the two of them are like, okay, where should we try to help out the line? And they look down the line. In the middle, we've got the big Ajax and little Ajax, and we've got Teucer, who are really holding their own against Hector. And Hector's not going to get past big Ajax. So they say, hey, let's take the left flank. Let's go over to the side and see what work we can do. And so we get this big fight scene over to the side, away from maybe the center of the action. And it definitely gives us the impression that this kind of fighting is going on up and down the entire line. And while we may have one book focusing on one particular hero, really this sort of thing is happening everywhere on the field. And so for the next several pages, there is a lot of trading off back and forth between Idomeneus and Meriones and Deiphobus and some of his friends. And although it seems like they can't take each other out, they keep knocking out close friends and relatives of each other, and then bragging about it. I'll take aim at one of my favorite heroes, but instead of getting him, he'll duck and it'll take out one of his friends. We also get Antilochus, the son of Nestor, who jumps in here and gives an assist as well. And as the fighting grows heavier, Asius, who we saw in the last book, crying because Zeus didn't let him take the gates, he gets killed. Some Greeks you've never heard of get killed, and then everybody's like, oh no, I can't believe that guy died! And throughout this whole scene, you get this very intense fighting. The kills are gruesome and bloody. One guy gets his brain splattered on the inside of his helmet as the spear goes through his face. And while there is something of a feeling of trading off back and forth between the Greeks and the Trojans, it's clear that the Trojans are getting the worst of it. It also feels, unlike some of the earlier parts of the book, to be less one-on-one and more of an intense scuffle back and forth. There are moments in this book where it seems like we take one of theirs, they take one of ours, we take one of theirs, they take one of ours. But in this one, it does seem much more chaotic and much quicker. You're also going to see, as we've seen before in some of these fight scenes, moments where we reflect on the loss of different characters. Even if they didn't matter to us much as the reader, we see their cost through the way the other characters react to their loss, or through little glimpses through the narrative poetry that reflect on the impact that their loss is going to have on their lives, on their homes, and their families. The sort of things they like to do and the way that they've lost here. And it seems the skirmish just keeps intensifying as more and more heroes begin to pile into it. We get Helenus, who is one of the brothers of Paris and Hector. We get Menelaus, who joins in on the other side. And in the midst of this, you get these heroes who are mocking after their kills. Idomeneus mocks a man who had joined the fight on the side of Troy because Priam had offered one of his daughters in marriage. And Idomeneus mocks, talking about making him a better offer as he drags his corpse off the field. And then Menelaus gives one of these little speeches after his kill. But this speech seems to be more resonant, I think, than some of the little boasting and bragging that goes on between kills. Menelaus says, "So home you'll run from our racing ships, by God, all as corpses. See, you death-defying Trojans, never sated with shattering war cries, are you? Nor do you lack the other brands of outrage, all that shame you heaped on me, you rabid dogs. No fear in your hearts for the quaking rage of Zeus, the thundering god of host and welcome stranger. One day he'll raise your lofty city for you, you Trojans who stole away my wedded wife, and hordes of riches too, for no reason, none. My queen of the realm who hosted you with kindness, and now you rampage on among our deep sea ships, wild to torch our hulls and kill our heroes. Well, you'll be stopped somewhere, mad as you are for combat. Zeus, Father Zeus, they say you excel all others, all men and gods in wisdom clear and calm. But all this brutal carnage comes from you. Look how you favor them, these reckless Trojans. Their fury is always in an uproar. No one can ever slake their thirst for blood, for the great leveler war. One can achieve his fill of all good things, even of sleep, even of making love, rapturous song and the beat and the sway of dancing. A man will yearn for his fill of all these joys before his fill of war. But not these Trojans. No one can glut their lust for battle." This speech is interesting because Menelaus places all the blame for the fighting, the bloodshed, on the Trojans. It's their insatiable lust for destruction that led them to this. I don't know that that's entirely fair, especially since Menelaus is leading the invading army, which is trying to tear down the walls and the home of the Trojans. They're the ones who are protecting their home. But he does have the point that they're the ones who were the first aggressors. He continually sees them and blames them for it. But not only them, he also turns his sights on Zeus. He calls out Zeus for supporting the Trojans in their onslaught here. I was the one wronged, and Zeus, you're siding with them and driving them on to kill us all. And so Menelaus feels very justified. And I think this speech is also interesting in the middle of this theme of the cruelty and horrors of war. We are in such an intense fight scene, and Menelaus is actually doing very well at the moment. But he also is reflecting on how they're just not stopping and how the war is going to continue to cost them. Paris is also stepping in here, and he is doing some excellent work with his bow, taking out several of the Greek heroes. So as Deiphobus calls Aeneas to back him up, Idomeneus turns around and calls his friends to back him up, and then Aeneas turns around and calls his friends to back him up, and nobody's backing down, and everything's getting really thick. Aeneas throws, Idomeneus dodges, Idomeneus throws and kills somebody else. Deiphobus tries to go for Idomeneus, misses. One of Ares' sons dies. Deiphobus tries to grab a helmet off of a guy who he just killed, but Meriones stabs him in the arm. Meriones goes in for the kill of Deiphobus, but Deiphobus gets dragged out of the way by one of his brothers. Antiochus is killing people left and right. Adamas tries to get Antiochus, but Poseidon won't have it. Helenus tries to shoot Menelaus. Menelaus spears him in the hand. Kills going on back and forth. Meanwhile, what is going on over with Hector? The rest fought on like a mass of whirling fire. But Hector, dear to Zeus, had no idea. Hector heard nothing of how his men, left of the ships, were torn and mauled in the Argives' rough response. The glory might even have gone to them at any moment, so intent was the god who grips and shakes the earth as he surged his Argives on, and the gods surged too, adding his own immortal force in their defense. But Hector kept on driving too, just at the point where he first broke through the gates and wall he charged. He smashed the Achaean lines densed with armed men, and where Prostelius and giant Ajax ships lay hauled up on the breaking, churning surf, and the wall to landward dipped low on the ground. The weakest point where the fiercest fighting raged, waves of Trojans, Trojan horse in assault. And then we see little Ajax giving support to big Ajax and Teucer, little Ajax with his Locrians. And the Locrians are not hand-to-hand fighters, they are rather projectile fighters, and so they start shooting arrows and flinging stones, and it's enough to begin to push the Trojans back at that point. Finally, Polydamas pulls Hector aside and is like, we are not fighting with a battle plan anymore. We have no strategy. We made this great break through the wall, and then we kind of stopped having any plan. We need to get the leaders together, regroup, and figure out what we're doing here. Because what we're doing here is not working. And so Hector runs down the line to see where his leaders are and to try to regroup a little bit. Which gives him the opportunity to see how things are going on the left, which is not good. And he runs into Paris, who's still working really hard over here. But he's like, Paris, where's the rest of the Trojans over here? And he rattles off all the names of the guys who were either killed or wounded. Deiphobus? Helenus? Asius? Adamas? What happened to you guys? And Paris is like, it's not my fault, I promise, I've been fighting really hard over here. And so now that they've regrouped, Hector turns around and leads the charge with all of his best men. And as he charges, here comes great Ajax out to fight him. Madman, here come closer. Trying to frighten Argives, why waste your breath? No, it's not that we lack the skill in battle. It's just the brutal lash of Zeus that beats us down. Your hopes soar, I suppose, to gut and crush our ships. Well, we have strong arms too, arms to defend those ships. And long before that, your city packed with people will fall beneath our hands, plundered to rubble. And you, I say, the day draws near when off you run and pray to Father Zeus and all the other deathless gods to make your full-manned horses swifter than hawks, whipping dust from the plain to sweep you back to Troy. And just as he says that, an eagle flies over on the right. And we know what eagles mean. They are a symbol of victory. But Hector returns in kind. Enough of your blustering threats, you clumsy ox. What loose talk? What rant? I wish I were as surely the son of storming Zeus for all my days, and noble Hera gave me birth. And I were prized as they prize Athena and Apollo. As surely as this day I will bring your Argives' death, down to the last man. and you will die with the rest. If you have the daring to stand against my heavy spear, its point will rip your soft, warm skin to shreds. Then you'll glut the dogs and birds of Troy with your fat and flesh, cut down by your beaked ships. We have this really dramatic last moment where Ajax and Hector yell and charge at each other, and that's where the book ends. Okay, so this book is very intense and very exciting. Let's look at some of the key features now. First of all, there is an instance of personification as panic is running around on the field. There are also the usual epic similes, like this one. Like a deadly rolling boulder torn from a rock face, a river swollen with snow has wrenched it from its socket, immense floods breaking the bank's grip, and the reckless boulder bounding high, flying with timber rumbling under it. Nothing can stop it now, hurtling on undaunted down, down, till it hits the level plain, and then it rolls no more with its wild rush. So Hector threatened at first to rampage through the Argive ships and shelters and reach the sea with a single sudden charge, killing all in his way. It was like this boulder bounding down the side of a hill. There's also the recurring theme that the gods symbolize fate. And as the gods clash with each other, they bring absolute destruction to humanity. It talks about the clash between Zeus and Poseidon, here in line 400. The two powerful sons of Kronos, Zeus and Poseidon, their deathless spirits warring against each other, were building mortal pains for seasoned heroes. Zeus willing a Trojan victory, Hector's victory, lifting the famous runner Achilles' glory higher, but he had no lust to destroy the whole Argive force before the walls of Troy. All the father wanted was glory for Thetis and Thetis' strong-willed son. But Poseidon, surging in secret out of the gray surf, went driving into the Argive ranks and lashed them on, agonized for the fighters beaten down by Trojans. And his churning outrage rose against great Zeus. Both were gods of the same line, a single father, but Zeus was the elder born, and Zeus knew more. And so Poseidon shrank from defending allies out in the open, all in secret. Always armed like a man, the god kept urging armies on. Both gods knotted the rope of strife and leveling war, strangling both sides at once by stretching the mighty cable, never broken, never slipped, that snapped the knees of thousands. And so these two gods working at cross purposes are leading both sides to more and more suffering and pain. As I mentioned before, there's also the theme that war is cruel. In the midst of this very intense fighting, we get lots of little references to the loss that these characters will have in the world. There's Idomeneus, who decides to join the Trojans' side in order to marry Cassandra. And so you have this little moment where, because he wants to marry Cassandra, he's joined the fighting, now he's dead. And not only that, but Idomeneus then mocks him for that reason of joining the fighting. Likewise, when Alcathous dies, it focuses in on his wife and her mother and father and all of her beauty and how happy they were to wed her to this hero, and then he gets gutted on the field. War is cruel and ugly and costly. Finally, there's the eagle symbol, which we've seen multiple times throughout the book. Just as Ajax speaks, an eagle flies up in the sky, and that's always a good sign for the person speaking, unless, of course, the eagle is like being bitten by a snake at the same time. So, quite an exciting moment, full of action. We will see how things continue when we get to Book 14. Thanks for watching. You can click to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.